Hello, I'm Stephanie Ellis and I'm the author of The Five Turns of the Wheel and its sequel Wheelborn and The Woodcutter. So that's 3 folk horrors so far and there are more to come. Today I'd like to read to you chapter 7 from The Five Turns of the Wheel, and it's actually the first turn of the wheel, which is the first night of ritual in this world I've created. So my people, they don't get off very lightly. They tend to have to go through it night after night. So this is the first turn of the wheel. Tommy was enjoying himself. The terrified expression on Liza's face was one he could feed off. It was the perfect aperitif to the evening ahead. He would keep them in suspense a little longer, a delicious delay. He was hungry, but not for anything Simon's kitchen could provide. The knives were almost ready, their edges as sharp as his own appetite. He picked up the last remaining sword and spat on its steel. This was his blessing. This was to be the sword of the chosen one. Smearing the saliva across its face, he continued to work at the metal. As he looked into its surface, he could see Megan's shadow reflected, her eyes drawn to the rediscovery of light in the dulled blade. The connection was being made, the thread woven between them. It was time for her to discover her true heritage, an apprenticeship that would begin tonight. With the child growing inside her, her heritage was secure. Eventually he was finished, and the swords were wrapped up once more in their shroud and placed in Betty's pack. The giant would appear soon. Only when Fiddler played could they begin the dance. Simon placed an old dice on the table before him. Immediately the pub silenced as if in response to some unspoken command. The locals rose as one and brought their drinks over to gather around him. All eyes were on the dice, waiting for the roll that would tell them where the first turn's festivities would be. All the villages were ready, and each would take part in the 5 events, but the order had not been determined. A single note sounded at the top of the stairs. Bow scraped on string, a discordant knife piercing the good-natured atmosphere, floating out through the open door and along the village lanes, summoning any who remained within, calling to them to prepare themselves. Inside, back straightened and eyes hardened. Silence reigned as Fiddler made his way down to them. Then it was Betty's turn. Tommy gazed up at him. In spring the giant wore a crimson dress slashed with silver and gold. In the autumn this changed to black, scattered with a starscape of silver with orange flames along its hem. Betty brought fire when the wheel turned, a bonfire which destroyed the rotten and the useless, cleared the way for the new. His beard was plaited and trimmed with ribbons as fiery as the flames on his dress, which fell only as far as his knees. His legs remained exposed to the evening air. His hirsute covering meant anyone looking at him would not be able to imagine him feeling the cold. His animal pelt would keep him warm. Tommy saw the golden glint in Betty's eye. The wolf in the pack was ready. The dice lay heavy in Tommy's hand, carved long ago from the bone of his ancestors. Each face carried a rune carving, one for each village, including Cropso. If it landed on the latter, he would roll again, but it never did, its inclusion a mere courtesy. Cropso, the centre of the hub, knew its place in the order of things. It was where the Umbrans took their own turn on the 6th night, so rarely spoken of, at least aloud. On that night the villagers would remain indoors, and those who looked outside never did so again. Tommy rolled the dice. "Ashburn," he announced to the company. "Make way, gentlemen. Let Fiddler play the tune. It is time to turn and turn about." Out they went into the newly born night. Ashburn, like the other villages, was a good 3 miles away. The sky was clear, early clouds had dispersed, and there was no sign of the rain that threatened. It was always this way. Nature understood what was to happen. This was for her. She made sure things went smoothly. Betty raised his face to the heavens and let out a long, unearthly howl. Somewhere in the distance came a response, wolf calling to wolf. It was a sound that in other places would cause nervous glances to be exchanged, worried looks, the locking of doors. Here it meant doors opened and the village's inhabitants poured out onto the streets. The 3 men, Tommy, Fiddler and Betty, took their place at the front of the procession and headed along the lane leading to Ashburn.